My name is Kelly M., and you're on The Common Surface. And we are blessed to have Christopher Dunn with us. Christopher Dunn is a mechanical engineer, I believe, and an author of several fascinating books on the Giza Pyramid and on topics related to it. He has gone from having a penchant for this topic back in the 70s and early 80s to finally getting his book published and setting off a wonderful firestorm of fascinating, riffing on his work. And so we're really glad to have him on The Common Surface. He's here. So, Chris, why don't you say hello?
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so, it's very interesting to me that, that being an engineer and having an engineering mindset and taking it to something that is from a different mindset, a topic from a different mindset, and applying, sort of like if you look at the history and philosophy of science, there are a lot of people doing philosophy of physics. There are a lot of people doing philosophy of economics, but there aren't very many people doing philosophy of engineering.
No, and that's that may be because there isn't one.
Yeah. Well, the philosophy is it has to work.
No,
right?
I think the philosophy of engineering is contained within just about all other philosophies, whether it is Plato or Descartes. I think it's more in line with Descartes' philosophy, because it's all about making things work and proving ideas and testing ideas to determine their truthfulness.
Right. And repeatability.
Yes, and being able to repeat them and describe them in a way to other people so that they can repeat them. I mean, it's like the application of science on a daily basis, and it's very important to that the principles of science are adhered to religiously. Every day. Otherwise, you'd have airplanes falling out the sky and, bridges collapsing without assistance from these carrier ships.
Right, like the bridge, the Galloping Gertie.
Yeah, right. So, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge that was subject to resonant forces and collapsed.
Yeah.
So, you have basically, I think there's not much room. There's not much room for creativity in that takes you away from what is tried and true in engineering. And so, particularly in manufacturing engineering, because the aspects of manufacturing engineering, it's like you have the science is already figured out, and there's nothing you can do to affect that. All you can do is accurately replicate the customer's requirement and satisfy the customer. So you're working to pre-designed blueprints and specifications.
Right. You're traveling. You're traveling on a unique road, but nonetheless, it's very similar to other roads.
Exactly. Yes. And so that is basically, I think, I would say that that's my touchstone when you talk about my research in Egypt. It is to keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
The old KISS method.
Yeah,
and not to introduce unnecessary elements in a analysis. It's kind of like the old Occam's razor, except, of course, the Orthodox archaeologists and Egyptologists would say that all my work is a violation of Occam's razor. but the
Yeah.
but that's just because the fundamental ideas are a little different.
Right. So, one of the, nuances on the topic where we've just been discussing is that when you get into a reverse engineering mode, like here's a device or
Right,
here's something that might be a device,
right.
and yet, how does it work? That is a little bit more creative than the standard engineering implementation.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, you have, I mean, you have certain parameters and restrictions, and those are actually the product that you are analyzing. So,
Right.
you have to be true to what it currently exists and what you're trying to understand.
Yeah.
But as far as trying to determine how it functions, um, that's another matter altogether, because
Right.
how to arrive at any conclusion when you're coming in cold and all you have in front of you is are blueprints and measurements, and trying to figure something out as to how what it might have done, how it could have operated.
Right.
Then and then certainly, the your creativity is limited by your core philosophy on a lot of things. Like what history is, the past. Um, I think what your view is of a particular culture that created this device or this product that you're trying to understand. And so it's kind of like, for me, the eye opener for me was my research took me into an area that other people had had not even entered, in terms of uh, ascribing a really advanced civilization that existed in Egypt. That the Egyptians were capable of producing something so advanced that even today uh, we're still trying to fully understand it.
No doubt. And, one of the things about that particular, structure is how old is it? What are
Well,
the what are the people that you're working with in Egypt, the more open-minded folks? What are they saying about how old that thing is?
right now their mind is being changed, and which is kind of gratifying in a way, is that they're beginning to recognize that the Great Pyramid is much more, the pyramids in general, uh, um, are much more than what has been taught. In other words, they are abandoning the tomb theory and looking at the pyramid as a machine and trying to understand how it functions. Now, this is kind of like a revolution that has been taking place over the last few years. It's only in the last, I think, 5 years that they've really started in earnest to and got serious about trying to change the narrative on their ancestors. And
Right.
so when you look at how what we're taught about ancient Egypt, um, it comes from Western scholars who studied in Egypt and basically delivered to the world uh, the history of Egypt, and that is a history that is stuck, and even the Egyptians themselves. You have a kind of like a hierarchy in Egypt with Egyptologists. The most famous ones and successful ones were trained in Western universities. Um, So it's kind of like a situation where the the revolution is more of a grassroots movement of professionals, engineers, scientists, physicists, who are now lending their voice, where at one time it was unpopular to even suggest that the pyramids were not tombs. Now they're arguing a little more strongly that they weren't tombs; they were machines.
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of gets us back to Karl Popper's, it's sort of like the modern version of Occam's razor is Karl Popper, the philosopher of science, said that, when a new idea comes along, you got to wait for the people who held the old idea to die.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's unfortunately that's true.
Yeah.
Or fortunately,
Yeah.
and it's like you have 100 years of over 100 years of studies by Egyptologists, and with William Flinders Petrie in the 1880s, he was considered Britain's first Egyptologist. And he did some amazing work, but most of his, mechanical conclusions, or those conclusions that were based on his knowledge of mechanics and measurement, they seem to have been abandoned by modern scholars. But not abandoned by engineers like myself.
Yeah. Well, thank heavens for that, right?
Right. So, that's why Petrie and myself are pretty unpopular in the Egyptology crowd
Well,
because,
I went back and took a look at your original book this past weekend. And, I kind of, yeah, I have to admit it, I snickered to myself a little bit because you're sort of like you're like a lawyer that's, you're like Perry Mason that's got the witness on the stand, and you're slowly taking apart their narrative, one piece at a time, saying, well, if this is true, then why is this way, right?
right,
And you're kind of taking apart the narrative one piece at a time, when we kind of, are learning that maybe the whole Egyptology narrative was a deflection to prevent the scientific knowledge from being discovered before it had been mastered elsewhere, right?
right. I mean, I think that's important though, because, when you, when you come up with a, a thought or an idea or a theory that is so controversial, I think you have to explain what allowed you to even go down that path to consider such a
Right,
theory. So then you have to look at what theories are currently in force and how they hold up. So it's like the the interesting thing about skepticism, right? Rene Descartes, he wrote about his meditations on doubt and how a person has to constantly be skeptical of the foundations of their thinking and examine every part of the structure, whether it's the structure they built in their mind or the physical structure they built materially, and to uh, identify the weak parts of it and remove them, replace them, or repair them. But it is all based on doubt. So that kind of philosophy, though, I think has been corrupted a little bit because his maxim, like that which could be doubted must be rejected, generally is used by skeptics only one way, and that is to reject new ideas
right.
by wielding the Descartes philosophy. But
Yeah,
they don't examine their own ideas. Well, Descartes was looking internally himself.
Right.
And this is the thing that, you have people who, like myself, like Joe Farrell, is a brilliant author, and and many others. Graham Hancock is another brilliant man. But they will apply their skepticism to our work while failing to examine their own ideas and how that they are supported by evidence.
Interesting. Yeah. So, you know, the uh, the Great Pyramid itself, if it is to be considered a device, um, which I accept that, there's little doubt in my mind whatsoever that it's a device.
Right.
Well, has anyone ever done sort of a Fermi calculation on what would the total energy of that device be?
I've had some estimates done. I am skeptical of all of them.
Yeah.
Uh, and I certainly am not capable of producing one. There are elements involved that are unknown. So, in order to actually arrive at a particular number, you'd have to have very, very accurate figures. Uh, I mean, they know how many megawatts a 500 megawatt power station is going to produce, right?
Right.
So, so I got an estimate from a young man in England who is an estimator for power plants
Oh,
of
wow.
a conventional type on what the Great Pyramid would produce, and he thought it would be in the order of 25 gigabytes. I mean gigawatts of
Wow.
power. So, but I'm not so sure. I mean, certainly he's more qualified than me to arrive at a number. But there are, in my mind, still there are unknowns in terms of
Yeah.
the the amount of the amount of power that it can draw through it, that it
Right.
can actually release from the earth.
Right.
Uh, so until those unknowns are figured out, then uh, I don't think we could put an accurate number on it. Certainly, I would say, even though um, this man gave an estimate of building the pyramid of about $25 billion, that is, I
You mean
think, a very
25 gigawatts?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is, I'm not sure that is a really accurate uh,
Yeah,
uh,
I don't think we're at the
estimate.
stage where you can get. I agree with you. I don't think we're at the stage where we can get accurate. That's why I mentioned Enrico Fermi, because one of the things that Fermi would do, he's kind of like Richard Feynman a little bit, like the Italian Richard Feynman. He would try to estimate really difficult questions within an order of magnitude. So if
Yeah,
Fermi got an answer within an order of magnitude, based on what he said, that gave him ideas for further tightening the precision, right,
right,
on the answer.
right.
So if it's at 25, gigawatts, plus or minus one order of magnitude, that it's probably somewhere in there,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I would say that I think in terms of the return on investment, uh,
Yeah.
if you if you have a an electron harvester the size of the Great Pyramid, um, the return on investment would be fairly quick in terms of what it produces, even though it may produce less. Uh, if you say, okay, it has less output than a power plant, uh, a conventional power plant that costs the same amount of money, but the conventional power plant has all of these support systems that it needs to function, such as in 2021, the amount of coal that was quarried to feed power plants in the United States by weight would equal a pyramid 76 times the size of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
Right. So if you have a 25 gigawatt power plant and you're feeding it coal on one side, and you have a power plant that's only producing 5 gigawatts, but it costs the same money, it wouldn't take long before the one that's producing 5 gigawatts would the return on its operation would be very, very quick.
Yeah.
And whereas the conventional power plant, you would need to keep feeding it coal and everything else in order for it to function.
Yeah, it's a lot of smoke too.
A lot of smoke. Well, yeah, you have all the pollution control
Yeah.
systems in place. And, imagine that, oh wow, the coal trains, snaking through the countryside, bringing coal to that power plant, and yet here you have an electron harvester. It's just drawing energy from underneath it, and that's the source of your power, and you don't have to feed it anything except maybe a couple of chemicals and water.
Yeah, when I was reading your book, one of the things that occurred to me was like, it was the Queen's chamber, like the starter engine, and that once, and it started creating the vibrations in the King's chamber, because there's that whole musical note component of that. It's like F sharp, E minor, and the King's chambers in A. And it had me thinking, once did the Queen's chamber act like the starter engine, like the pull cord on a lawnmower to get it going? And once it was vibrating at a certain rate, with a certain energy development, that it would be self-sustaining. Because that seems to me to be a lot more effective way of operating something like a pyramid as an energy source than having the Queen's chamber be pumping out hydrogen all the time.
Yeah, well, the the source of the pulse is actually in the subchamber, which is beneath the Queen's chamber.
Right.
Right. And so in the Giza Power Plant, I identified that as driving vibrations into the earth and into the pyramid itself.
Right.
So, and by doing so, actually coupling the pyramid harmonically with the earth.
Right.
And I described the system as the pyramid as a coupled oscillator. So when it's set into motion and harmonically attached to a larger vibrating body,
Right.
then it will draw energy from that larger vibrating body. So, but there's an evolution of thought that has transpired over the 25 years since the Giza Power Plant was published. New information that has come in. And and so now I'm more inclined to consider that there was a pulse generator under the entire plateau,
Oh,
rather
wow.
than just the Great Pyramid inside the Great Pyramid.
Right.
I think I think what the pulse generator in the Great Pyramid was, it could have been along the lines of a Tesla earthquake machine,
Yeah.
where you have the the time pulses that kind of start to shake a structure and bring it to resonance. So, but with all the pyramids in the area, my vision is that you had a system deep underneath the Giza plateau because of the the existence of electrons that can be released from igneous rock in the lithosphere if they are stressed. And they call it the Freund effect.
Right.
Right. So I write in my book about Friedrich Freund. He is a NASA physicist and had studied earthquake lights for many years. And actually, his studies brought him to be able to describe and explain and demonstrate the physics behind earthquake lights. And what he has done is he has taken different examples of igneous rock. Some of them are quartz-bearing rocks, others are not. So you've got granite, you've got diorite, gabbro, basalt, and all of these rocks will actually exhibit this Freund effect. And the way he describes it is when you put this rock under pressure, there are peroxide defects in the minerals where you have electronic charge carriers that will shoot up to the surface of the Earth, reaching the highest point in the topography. So his objective, though, his mind was certainly far removed from pyramids. He wasn't trying to prove anything as far as the pyramids were concerned. Well, what he wanted to do was to be able to develop the science and the physics behind an early warning system for earthquakes, because when the plates, start to press together, build up these forces, they emit these electrons that show up on the hillsides around where generally these earthquakes occur. And what happens is they shoot to the surface and they ionize the air, and they show up as infrared and earthquake lights, sometimes visible lights. But the NASA satellites have picked them up. Will pick them up around the Earth. There are many examples of them. Earthquake lights have been well known for many, many years. You have them in, I think, Marfa, Texas. You have, these terrestrial light shows that where you have the ionization of electrons coming through. Now, the question is was this the result of the Freund effect? I mean, I would speculate that it is. And, I would also say that if you are looking for a place to build a electron harvester that will harvest those electrons and be able to distribute them to the population to power our devices, then, you would look for these hotspots around the Earth and lay your electron harvester in those areas. So, but the mechanics behind it, I mean, it's kind of like heavy engineering when you come down to it, because in order to really hit the lithosphere with vibrations that are sufficient to move and squeeze the rock like natural forces, like an earthquake, you would have to have some significant energy being input into the Earth. Now the other part of that, if you look at the Giza Plateau, and really, the Giza Plateau is just a wealth of information, and it's not just the what they can teach us in terms of their knowledge of machining or their knowledge of being able to move extremely large monolithic blocks of stone, but the excavations that they made on the Giza Plateau. You have these very, very deep shafts cut into the bedrock, and you find these all around the pyramids. Not They're not well known or explored or discussed, but they are there. And there are reports of people who have actually entered some of these deep shafts and tunnels. And so, I think a concerted and more systematic investigation on the Giza Plateau would involve clearing out a lot of sand and just taking it right down to the bedrock and examining it, every single feature, and mapping every single feature underneath the pyramids, as well as the pyramids themselves.
Yeah. So has anybody ever done any research to find the control room for this place?
I don't know. I think the question, in my mind is, if you have a control room for a power plant, like the Great Pyramid, you could have a temporary structure with all, your means of control in the temporary structure. So if all weak structures around the Great Pyramid disappeared over time, then your control room doesn't no longer exist.
Right.
So, right. So, the only thing that needs to be really robust is the Great Pyramid itself.
Right.
Now, I mean, in terms of the the energy of the site, I think you'd need more than corrugated iron shack,
Yeah. Yeah.
and some sticks
Right.
holding it up. And who knows? I mean, if
A double wide. Right.
yeah, yes, I mean, who knows? What they have described as temples on the plateau next to the second pyramid and third pyramid. You have these structures adjacent to them that are described as being temples. And they have the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple, and so the question in my mind is, did they have a different purpose? I believe they did, but
Yeah.
what that purpose was, I don't know.
Well,
Uh,
we know from your work in the latest book and earlier that there were kind of electrodes in the shafts, right? That were kind of detectors in the
right,
shaft, and
right.
some sort of valving, some sort of rate control, I guess you could call it. And so that would imply that there is some analog of adjustment that needed to be done, sensing and adjustment, right?
Yeah, it seems though that the chefs, and that's a fascinating topic. We could talk for an hour about that, but but we won't.
Yeah.
But the chefs in the Queen's Chamber have revealed more information in the last couple of decades. Going back to 2020, 2002, when they sent the Pyramid rover up the southern shaft to drill through Gantenbrink Store. Gantenbrink Store is a plate of limestone, a limestone block, really, that blocks the passageway of the shaft. Now these shafts are about 8 inches square, so they're not very big. And and why they call this a door, I have no idea. But
Yeah. It's just more obfuscation, you have to
yeah,
understand that Egypt's economy is in large part based on people, floating down the Nile and going to Luxor and doing the whole Egyptian thing, and so if they go to a different model, such as like these are huge machines, what does that do to their tourist economy, which they're entirely dependent on?
Yes, well, I think what they're finding now though is that they're having so many engineers now who are traveling through Egypt, technical type people.
Yeah,
Yeah, there are, I don't know how many Lost Technologies tours going on now. Certainly surprised the hell out of me
yeah,
because, you know, I, I remember years ago I was back in the 90s, I was in a message board discussion. And of course, I was receiving a lot of flack, a lot of challenges to my ideas. And somebody said that I was a lone voice in the wilderness. Nobody was listening, right? And and now it seems like I'm no longer a lone voice, and most engineers who go to Egypt now are definitely sympathetic to my ideas and coming up with their own ideas. But the other phenomenon that has happened is that the the rise of the internet and the availability of social media and YouTube and the access to those services by just regular technicians, machinists, and tool makers, tool and die makers, who when I was first using the internet, you you didn't see many machinists. They didn't have computer equipment at home, or they weren't accessing message boards and watching YouTube videos because, well, there was no YouTube. But but now there are millions of them, and so there is a huge interest from technical type people on the lost technologies aspects of my work. And they're joining tours and going to see the evidence for themselves. So it's kind of like the floodgates have opened, and there's nothing anybody can do to close them. It's just going to keep going. And Kelly, in my second book, The Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, I put a challenge out to Egyptian engineers to uh, to follow my footsteps and examine the artifacts for themselves. Uh, and they did. There was one engineer, a young man called Ahmed Adli, and he has a YouTube channel. Ahmed Adli, it's an Arabic channel, but he created a series of videos that became very popular in the Arabic-speaking world, and describing, the precision and engineering, and uh, doing examinations of the boxes in the Serapeum, the statues at Luxor, and many other features that I talk about in my book. So,
Did you
and
ever take a look at Robert Temple's work, The Sirius Mystery?
no, not very closely. I mean, I had the book, but I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't take. That was about the lenses, right?
yeah, it was about a lot of stuff. Well, that was
Yeah,
one aspect of it. He was describing a lot of the geometry of the pyramid, which was and the precision of the geometries of the pyramid, and
right.
uh, and also an ancient tribe, which is modern day Mali, called the Dogon, who have a secret religion that they never shared with anybody. And then some French explorers got them to eventually earn their trust and asked them to share their religion, and they ultimately did. And they wrote a paper on it. I think it was in the early 30s. And basically these you're in dirt floor mud huts, and they were saying that Sirius had a twin, had another. It was a binary star,
Right.
and it wasn't until much later that that Sirius B was discovered, and they said there's even a Sirius C as well, which wasn't discovered until the late 70s. And so for some reason, and the Dogon people are, they say they're from Egypt and they left.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So it's another whole nother wrinkle on this whole topic, right? The
yeah. I mean, that information is striking and I think very interesting.
yeah.
But it's kind of outside of my lane, which is probably why I did not dive into it too deeply, because then the question is, what do I do with that
Yeah, right.
information?
You got to get back to the engineering. You got to find stuff that works. You got to put food
Yeah.
on the table with the engineering, right?
Well,
That's
yeah. No, I mean, it's like I I have a specialty, and it's manufacturing, and so
yeah,
I if I do kind of venture outside of my specific specialty, it's still going to be engineering, but I'm going to be talking to other specialists in
right.
those specific areas. So that's basically the my the path that I follow. I wanted to stay really, really tight and disciplined on what I talked about, so that I wouldn't leave any room to be attacked on.
Yeah, right. I totally get it.
And
Right? That's one of the admirable things about your work is that, you're very disciplined about. I'm sure you're curious about all that stuff, but you're very disciplined about staying on point. And it's one of the things I admire about your work. And one of the questions I had, back to the engineering topic, is the pyramid weighs like what, like two, like 3 billion pounds. You know,
yeah, I mean it's just under 6 million tons.
six
The
million
Great
tons,
Pyramid.
right?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like just like 10 billion. It's like some extraordinary amount of you put it
It's
in
heavy.
U.S. terms. It's really heavy. So that is
It's
putting a
heavy.
load on the Earth all by itself, right? So that's going to be creating electrical flows all by itself, right?
Mm. Well, when I when you consider, the forces on the earth, in the earth, and what man can do to have an effect on how the earth functions, uh, I our efforts are minuscule, in
Yeah.
terms of what we can do compared to what the earth can do. It's like, we build a pyramid, the earth says, hold my beer. And,
Right. Exactly.
and then suddenly, there is a huge uplift, or, a shift in the earth, and a rearrangement of the landscaping. Uh,
Yeah.
so, it's kind of like when you look at an amount of rock that is sitting on the surface of the earth. If it's whether it's a pyramid or a mountain, the earth, I don't think has it doesn't have much of an effect on what happens in the earth at all.
Interesting. Yeah. So back also another question that's been on my mind too, because I'm a musician. So sound is really important to me. And so, when I saw in your book, the commentary from that other explorer about what the sounds, what were the resonance frequencies of the pyramid, I was eminently fascinated by that. And it's something in like an F sharp minor, which of course, if you go to Affectanly, or the doctrine of affect in Germany, and you look at sort of the Baroque composers, to them F sharp minor was the key of tyranny and demons and really, really bad stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's all like a Hotel California, starts in B minor and then it gets that F sharp minor, which is like the foreboding, it's like foreboding. And then when it goes to the Grand Gallery, it switches to A, which of course is in the key of F sharp, right?
Yeah.
It's the third, and I was just wondering, when this pyramid was operating, what did it sound like?
I don't think we could have stood inside the Grand Gallery when it was operating.
No, I doubt it. It'd probably be just
We wouldn't have been able to stand it.
yeah, it would be a Darwinian event for sure. You get the Darwin Award for standing in the pyramid while operating,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. Well, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
can
You
you
just.
imagine if that thing was really humming and resonating at 25 gigawatts? What it
Yeah. Well.
sounded like?
Yeah. You'd be in a hydrogen atmosphere too, so that wouldn't work.
Yeah, yeah. Hydrogen is generally not.
Not
It's
too
not
healthy.
a happy day. But just
No.
this thing, humming, at 25 gigawatts in the key of F sharp, just humming along, producing all this amazing amount of energy. So what would happen if the energy wasn't being drawn away from it? What would happen if this thing is humming and operating at, 95% or whatever, or 100% or whatever it was? What would happen to the energy that wasn't being used? Would it just sit there like a
No.
battery?
No. 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 Well, I think basically you have the evidence of what happened when things got a little too powerful for it. The obviously something happened in prehistory, and people are recognizing now that there was a cataclysm that wiped out an advanced civilization in the past.
Yeah.
And so when we look at the different mechanisms that could have happened to you have the Younger Dryas impact, various comet impacts, the solar burst, coronal mass ejections that
Yeah.
can play havoc with us. Uh, the the effects of a comet strike or an asteroid hitting the Earth. You have a system that is tuned to maximize throughput of energy from the Earth, and so that system it relies on it's a closed system, right? So it was designed to be able to handle just a certain amount of energy, and um, any more energy, it would become, in effect, a runaway vibrator and destroy
Yeah.
itself, right? So,
Yeah.
so I mean, minor fluctuations could be handled internally, and I try to accommodate for that and
Yeah.
describing the blocks in the ascending passage,
Right.
where you may be able to you know, disrupt the power buildup by introducing noise or out of phase frequencies into the gallery.
Yeah.
Um,
Interferometry of some kind.
right, yeah. And so then you would kind of draw down the resonance or the amplitude of the
Damp it somehow.
vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would dampen it uh, by out of phase sound waves. But if you have a comet strike, then you're imparting into the Earth more energy than what the pyramids were designed to absorb, and so then they become runaway vibrators. They are attuned to the frequencies of the Earth, and you strike the Earth with a huge, Thor's hammer comes down, and and things start to shake apart. The
Yeah. So
evidence for
yeah, like even Tesla said, with a standing wave, using his Tesla generators with standing waves, he could shake the Earth apart.
yeah. Yes, I mean everything is resonance and frequency, right?
Right.
vibration, resonance, frequency,
Yeah.
harmonics. You have all of these perfectly matched, and you have a huge, a huge system, energy device. And the Great Pyramid is actually, because it's so finely tuned, and it appears to incorporate known frequencies of the of human DNA and the universe, like the F sharp chord is prominent there,
Yeah.
A and C sharp. Then you have in effect a gigantic musical instrument, and with that much power, you have an effect on the atoms in hydrogen,
Yeah.
which drives those atoms to a higher energy state, and then they're stimulated to jump to ground state with the introduction of a signal from the exterior. And so all of the evidence to actually support that I describe in the Giza Power Plant, and I refine it further in the Tesla connection.
Right.
Talking specifically about the shafts in the King's Chamber, the reason for the big void that was recently discovered through muography,
Yeah.
and various other discoveries over the years, or since the Giza Power Plant was published.
Did you have any insight into, I mean, maybe speculating a little bit here, so we want to caution the audience that we might be doing that. But do you have any insight or research into what was on top of the pyramid? There's nothing there now. You have those sort of granite columns that go straight up from the king's chamber, all the way to the roof, so to speak. And then you have this
Right.
sort of empty area. If you look at the occult symbolism for those pyramids, they show some kind of eye on top. Is there any, you care to comment on that, or can you provide any insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my current thinking on that is that you had connection points on the top of the pyramids, so that you would actually complete the circuit with the lithosphere from where the electrons were flowing. So you'd have these positive holes, charge carriers that were shooting to the surface, and then the handshaking with some device that's attached to the pyramid.
Wow.
Now, the reason why I say that is that that's based on Freund's laboratory experiments and research. What he did is he got a hydraulic press and a slab of granite. He put the granite under pressure on one end and fashioned a copper cap for the other end and ran a wire from one end to the other with an oscilloscope in between. And so he was able to put pressure on one end of the granite and measure the electron flow as it flowed from one end to the other.
Wow, using a giant rock slab as wire.
Yes, right. So and really, his description of the lithosphere is that when it's put under pressure, it turns into a giant battery.
Wow.
And so I think that is actually remarkable.
Yeah.
Remarkable knowledge, and
Yeah.
why we are, and hopefully, somebody may decide to say, I think I need to build a power plant so that I can be assured that the cars I'm building the electric cars I'm building will have enough energy in the future. So
Yeah.
maybe tap into maybe
Yeah.
tap into the lithosphere
Yeah.
and deliver that energy wirelessly.
Yeah. Now, just
Like,
doing a thought experiment for a second. I apologize, but just do a thought experiment for a second. Let's say that you were, Mr. Energy Source, Mr. Global or someone, and you wanted to roll out the Tesla technologies. You had enough of a control grid that you could keep people from using it for nefarious purposes. You had enough surveillance. And then so you start rolling out and start mandating electric cars, and everybody's complaining because they don't want to sit there for 2 hours and charge their cars while they're traveling to Yellowstone Park, right?
right.
But you need to get everybody enough people onto the electric cars in order to make it an economically viable thing to roll out the Tesla technology. So one of the things
Right.
I've been like sort of, what are they really up to? Is that a lot of this movement to electric cars and to total electrification? They know that the wind farms aren't going to work off the coast. They know that the wind farms are problematic and environmentally, ridiculous. I mean, they're really bad for the environment. Now, electric cars cost 3 times as much, from mining to disposal as a
Right.
gasoline powered car. I mean, they know the economics of these things are terrible, but what they're waiting for is to have enough demand that they can roll out, the real stuff that, like we've been talking about. And then they won't have to worry about recharging because they'll be able to pick it up through the Tesla, model, right?
Right. Well, I think basically you open up your imagination again, as you had mentioned earlier, and and try to envision what the best uh, system would be. And to me, what the barriers are. To me, right now, the barriers are to a very successful system are the batteries. And so I would say you need to develop a system where you don't need batteries in those cars, because even the batteries, if you need to replace one, they're what, $29,000 just to replace a battery on a Tesla. It's amazing.
Maybe I don't really understand it well enough, but I understood Tesla's model. What he was working on in Colorado was to wirelessly beam electricity where it was needed, including to airplanes.
Right, exactly. That's basically my point.
Yeah.
And that's why I put a dome over one of the graphics in my book. I have a Tesla dome over the pyramid. So basically, the vision is that you build your electron harvester, but you have a Tesla dome over it that is distributing the energy wirelessly. Um, and so if you have a system where, okay, you have a lot of cars on the road, and you have these relay stations, and you have power being delivered wirelessly to the relay stations, or even by wire to the relay stations, but the relay stations are delivering it wirelessly to the vehicles. And yeah, it sounds like a wild idea, doesn't it? But
Not to me.
well, when you consider, we take in all information, right?
Right.
And so a part of the information that is, I think, inspiring is the functionality of these UAPs
Right.
we had this recent official disclosure of, hey, these things are real. They're operating in our atmosphere, and there isn't a damn thing we can do about it. We don't have the ability to catch them, knock them out of the sky, or whatever. And you have a device that has demonstrated that it can drop down from 80,000 feet to sea level in just a few seconds,
Right.
or shoot off at 1,000 miles an hour and turn on a right angle without stopping. Uh, you've got a device that is, I think, hopefully is in our future.
Yeah.
But there are a few things that we would have to develop and understand before we're able to build a craft that can perform like that. One of them is to be able to manipulate gravity, uh, and I strongly believe that the ancients had that ability, and obviously these UAPs that are teasing us in our airspace, they have that ability too.
Yeah, in Joe Farrell's book, The Secrets of the Unified Field, he describes the experiments of Thomas Townsend Brown. Have you ever looked at Thomas Brown?
Yeah, I did years ago, and I think Joe's a brilliant author. He's a great guy for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes, but the whole idea, the reason I brought it up was that he described Thomas Townsend Brown's experiments, which we showed contrabary, right? And, that he was able to reliably reproduce contrabaric effects in his experiments, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And, and here we have, UAPs all over the place. And then
Yeah,
there's also Ben Rich's comment. He was giving a talk to high school students in LA. He was a Area 51 guy, like the chief, product guy over there at Skunk Works. And he said,
right.
we figured out that there was an error in the equations, and we now have the technology to take ET home.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And 3 days
Mm.
later, he was dead.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So
All right.
people are hoping on a certain rate of disclosure, and they're very strict about making sure that this stuff doesn't get out too quickly, right? And then that the sequence, that their rollout sequence is preserved. Clearly they're trying to roll it out, because otherwise we wouldn't be forcing people to go to electrical cars on a grid that clearly can't deliver the power, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you can't see rhyme or reason for why this is happening, uh, generally you don't know the rhyme or reason why it's happening.
Right, right. Whenever
Yeah, it's
whenever the data doesn't make sense, your model is wrong.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, but then there's another part of it, and it's kind of like when you have political leaders, and you actually speculate that there may be something really nefarious or really super intelligent for decisions that they make, and we're just not privy to them.
Yeah.
And when the truth is, no, they're just stupid.
Yeah, right. Yeah, never
they
attribute
they
to
just
us what can be attributed to
yeah, it's kind of like
yeah.
don't- yeah, don't attribute more than what it's kind of like the whole global warming thing, which
Yeah, right.
we don't want to talk about that, do
Yeah,
we?
yeah. I studied global warming as a student at Columbia back in the 90s, early 90s, and I was interviewing NASA scientists at Goddard on their global warming models and the effects that they were planning and all this kind of stuff. And I dutifully took notes and published my articles. And you know what? They made like 22 different, sort of predictions for when we start to see the effects. And, ex-presidents are building, big houses on the coastline even now, after
Right,
they said
right.
we would start to see these effects. And so we begin to see, again, an agenda and, various agendas. And, we just have to keep our own counsel about, requiring the rigor, if all I was hearing things back then, like Louisiana would be inundated, right? And, because it's
Yeah.
really low lying. And, here we are, there's been a little bit of subsidence because of the withdrawal of the oil and gas out of the Gulf, and the earth is still kind of springing back still from the glaciers.
Hmm.
um
And so, you have these sort of, multiple effects going on. But, none of their predictions came true. Not a
No, they didn't.
single one.
No. And, I mean, if I could afford it, I'd have a house overlooking the bay for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do I sign up for that, right?
Yeah, I just don't have the money to do it.
Yeah. Well, truth doesn't pay very well.
No, for sure.
But anyway, we've been on for a little bit over an hour. Is there anything else that you think we should cover before we wind up?
Well, I think we've covered quite a bit. I think as far as raising awareness, when we look at the different methods that we use for generating energy, and how we've been using the same method now for over 100 years. So, we have coal power plants generating steam and blowing turbines, and that's pretty much been the way.
Yeah, we're boiling water, right? As
We're
Einstein.
boiling water, whether it's coal, gas, or nuclear. We're boiling water.
Yeah,
and
it's a hell of a.
right.
When you heard about reactors, he said, that's a hell of a way to boil water.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you wonder, and I speculate in my book, if we could follow one of those UAPs home, and see what kind of an environment they come from.
Yeah.
What do their manufacturing plants look like? What do their cities look like?
Yeah, they don't have wood burning fireplaces. We can make that
right.
Stipulate that. Right?
Yeah, well, you see these coal trains snaking through the countryside, and smokestacks belching out smoke in the distance.
Exactly.
There are questions like that. It's kind of like, I mean, and the speculation is that if you had a civilization that had 1,000 years of technological development, where would they be? How far ahead of us would they be when you consider the advances of our technology in the last 100 years? It's incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, it really is incredible. It's fascinating. And so how do people find your book?
It is. It's in bookstores for sure. I'm not sure. I don't have information on its penetration into the library system. But my first two books were eventually available at libraries. It's on all the online bookstores have it. So there's no excuse not to buy it. Go out.
Yeah, I really do encourage people to look at it. One of the things I loved about it was the discipline of it. It's highly disciplined, the way that you approach it, and how you're willing to to entertain hypothesis. It's very much like a trivium. A perfect example of the trivium from Aristotle. Like examining a hypothesis, seeing if there's evidence to support it. If there's not, you go back to looking for more facts, and you kind of have this algorithm of proceeding that's just really, it warms my scientist heart, right? And
well, I try to follow the scientific method because it's the best one that we have.
Yeah, you think?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely. So, that's what I try to do.
Yeah, you have a website. You have a website too, right?
Yeah, that's gizapower.com, which is GIZAPOWER.
Yeah, well, Mr. Dunn, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I'm really glad we got a chance to chat.
I did too. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it very much.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Bye.